In Georgia, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is pushing ahead with his plan to remove 100,000 voter files from the voter rolls there. Raffensperger says that they are outdated and obsolete, and they need to be removed. Former President Trump said this in response, quote, "They had us losing by a very small number of votes, many times less than the 101,789 figure. This means that we won the presidential election in Georgia." Let's talk about that and welcome in now Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Governor Kemp, great to see you as always.
Hey, thanks, John. Good to be back on with you.
All right, so obviously the president's eyes are on Georgia. A lot of people are focused on these audits. There's been a lot of, I would just say, strange stuff, coincidental stuff that's happening, alarms going off, chain of custody documents missing here. I mean, still a lot of questions. You were once the Secretary of State in Georgia. Here we are all these months removed from the election and people still have questions. Are people ever going to have confidence in the elections in your state ever again?
Well, I certainly think they will because of our work this past legislative session with the Elections Integrity Act that makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat, Senate Bill 202. The Democrats called it Jim Crow 2.0. Of course, now they're changing their position and supporting federal legislation that does many of the things that we've always done in Georgia, which is just the pit of hypocrisy in many ways. But, I think that's given a lot of people confidence. We certainly have the legal process that continues to play out post-election. I'd remind you, I was the first person to call for a signature audit. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations has helped the Secretary of State investigators with investigations when they've asked, and they continue to look into these issues. And then, you obviously have a judicial ruling that we're waiting on right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
When people would say, how can you, in a chain of custody, even if, let's say these ballots are all perfectly legitimate, but when you don't have the chain of custody documents in a criminal case, that could sink the whole entire thing. And, these 100,000 names or voter files or whatever you want to call them, they're just now being removed from the voter rolls. Why were they not removed sooner?
Well, federal law does not allow you to do that. I mean, it is a voter record, so it would be an individual that would be removed from the rolls. It's really the process of keeping your rolls secure. The left calls it purging or voter suppression by taking people off the rolls. The state of Georgia has always followed federal law when it comes to this, as many other states around the country. I mean, you have people that are deceased, you have people that move out of state, don't tell you they register in another state, so they're registered in multiple states. And the way the law reads is you have to go through 2 general election cycles before you can start removing those. There's notices required. And so Georgia's simply following the law. Look, I got persecuted from the left when I was Secretary of State because at one point we removed, I think, around 500,000 individuals from the voter rolls, but it'd been 7 or 8 years since they had voted, which is what we're supposed to be doing to keep the rolls secure before an election. There's also rules that dictates when you can do that. There's certain dates before an election that prohibits that. And, the Secretary of State can obviously give you his thoughts on that. It really depends on the process and the year in which that is happening, which obviously I'm not involved in anymore.
Yeah, of course, you do know the process, though. You were involved in it as, former Secretary of State. And I think a lot of people would question that. I mean, in other words of saying there is federal law that protects, people from having their records purged, right? You just referenced that. And that would indicate, maybe some of the stuff that Democrats talk about in H.R. 1 might not be necessary after all.
Well, look, to me, H.R. 1 is an unconstitutional power grab. The states are supposed to decide their own laws when it comes to elections. That's what we've done in Georgia this year. We've done it after big elections many times in our state. On the flip side of that, you have Democrats like Bill Gardner in New Hampshire. They don't have any early voting. They don't want the feds telling them how they have to vote. They have some of the largest turnouts in the country. The Constitution says the states decide the election laws. That helps us protect against foreign interference in elections. That's what the founders said way back when, and that's never been more pertinent than today. And I think it's the way it should be. And I'm glad the Senate blocked that legislation yesterday.
Well, I want to focus on your primary race for the governorship in Georgia here. We had Congressman Jody Hice on earlier. He is challenging Brad Raffensperger, but we asked him about this race between you and Vernon Jones in the GOP primary. Here's what he said.
Again, I think what we've got to focus on is unifying our party in Georgia, making sure that we're not going to divide against one another. But that's part of what the primary process is about. I get that. I'm willing to work through some of those things. But at the end of the day, it's the voice of the people that needs to be heard, and they need to have confidence that their vote is going to be heard when they go to the ballot box. And that really is what is my primary focus in being involved in the race for Secretary of State to begin with.
We got another indication of how kind of a chippy this primary is going to be at the Georgia GOP convention with, there was some boos in the crowd for you, or there's some cheers, jeers, whatever you want to call it. But, we're seeing the video now. Were you surprised by this reception you got at the GOP convention?
No, I'm never surprised from a politically orchestrated event that literally lasted, 2 or 3 minutes out of a whole weekend I spent at convention. We had a huge event Friday night, hundreds and hundreds of people. I had to speak 4 different times. I think I took over 500 pictures with supporters, and my family was standing there right there with me, Marty and our 3 daughters, 3 hours before I spoke on Saturday. I worked the lunch line an hour after that. So, that's part of politics. I thought the convention went great. I'm going to run on my record. I can't control what other people are doing. I've been one of the most conservative governors Georgia's ever had, and one of the most conservative in the country. And I'm going to remind people that, we were the first state to reopen. I signed the heartbeat bill after pushing that through the Georgia General Assembly. Budget's in great shape, and we got the Elections Integrity Act passed.
You have that conservative record. We played that clip as well of the people cheering and jeering. I did think it was interesting as well that they made the decision to censure Brad Raffensperger at the convention, but they stopped short of doing that for you. I mean, again, it shows kind of where things stand in Georgia now. It's going to be an interesting primary season nonetheless. Real quickly, we got 2 minutes left here, Governor. I wanted to get your reaction on this talk about the crime bill. Atlanta specifically has been one of those cities hardly hit. We've focused on this show. Is there anything in this crime prevention plan or whatever it is that you've seen that's going to address what's affecting Atlanta? Seems like a Band-Aid on top of a really big wound.
Well, look, John, you look at the Democrats. I mean, they're now starting to come back to our position. You got the vice president that's finally going to go to the border. Obviously, their policies down there haven't been working. It's a crisis. We have a crisis in major cities around the country, certainly in the city of Atlanta, because of a soft on crime approach, an approach where you're not backing law enforcement. You're trying to defund law enforcement, not giving them the tools that they need. Now the president's having to come out and try to do something about that to save these mayors that just don't know how to keep their people safe, or they don't want to. I've been working on this for over 2 months. The state shouldn't be the city's police department, but I've willing to spend millions in emergency funds to do something about this. We have crime suppression units that are working with the Atlanta Police Department, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, State Patrol, Department of Community Supervision, the Sheriff's Office, the new District Attorney, to try to go after violent crime. I mean, we've made over 3,000 arrests or citations. We've impounded hundreds of cars. We've gotten dozens and dozens of people that have outstanding warrants because of these operations. Putting boots on the ground, backing the police, and letting them do their job works, but you have to do that. And the policies of the left and the Democrats has been not to do that, and then just let people get out of jail free once they get in, and we're chasing them the next day. And I will tell you, people here are fed up with it, and we are doing something about it. And I think we're thankfully dragging the Democrats along to hopefully help in this fight one of these days. But I will tell you, taking away people's Second Amendment rights doesn't fix the problem. Yeah, I saw a figure where it said there's so many new gun owners and people buying guns right now. It's because they're scared to death of these criminals that are out there.
We are going to talk about that, Governor, we are going to talk about that with a regular guest of ours, Antonia Okafor Cover. She will represent Gun Owners of America on that topic coming up. Governor Kemp, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again as the primary continues. Great to see you.
Thank you.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.